She paid every single bill, raised their child, carried the entire family. But her husband and mother-in-law called her a freeloader. Emily was exhausted from shouldering all finances alone, caring for baby Tommy while husband Ryan just scrolled his phone. His mother Margaret constantly attacked her, saying she was unworthy of her precious son. But the most shocking blow came when Ryan declared, "You're nothing but a country parasite. Get out with your little brat." Would Emily silently endure this abuse or strike back devastatingly? And what secret made Ryan panic when he received those court papers? The truth about this legal warfare will leave you absolutely stunned. And before we continue, write in the comments from which country you're watching the video, and also check if you're subscribed to the channel as I share interesting life stories with you every day. Okay, let's enjoy the story. Emily had been living in a bubble of illusion, a cozy family haven where she was the wife and mother, and Ryan the loving husband and father. But reality, as it often does, turned out far more brutal. They lived in a small but comfortable apartment on the city's outskirts, one that Emily had bought with a mortgage. It was her fortress, her little world, built with love and sheer determination. Emily worked remotely as an accountant for an international IT company. The job let her stay home with their young son, little Tommy, while she covered most of the family budget. Ryan, ambitious but not yet successful, was trying to build a career in sales. His earnings were unsteady, depending on commissions and bonuses, and they rarely covered even half the bills. The mortgage, utilities, groceries, clothes for Tommy, all paid from Emily's personal account. Ryan seemed to prefer ignoring it. He took it for granted, as if it were just how things were. Sometimes he'd toss out a condescending "thanks, dear," but there was no real gratitude or respect in his voice, just a hint of sarcasm. After Tommy's birth, everything shifted. Emily was exhausted, of course. Sleepless nights, feedings, colic, endless laundry, and cleaning it all drained her to the limit. But she loved her son beyond measure, and the hardships felt trivial compared to the joy of motherhood. Ryan, though, didn't share her enthusiasm. He started staying late at work more often, claiming important meetings and deals. In the evenings, instead of helping with the baby, he'd bury himself in his phone or the television, brushing off her pleas with "I'm tired too." But the real storm was brewing from Margaret Hayes, Ryan's mother. Margaret was a domineering woman, arrogant, and utterly convinced of her own righteousness. She saw Emily as a country bumpkin, unworthy of her promising and talented son. Margaret made regular visits to assess the situation. Her arrivals always turned into torture for Emily. She criticized everything, from the apartment's decor to Emily's clothes and parenting style. "What kind of wallpaper is this? Such bad taste," she'd wrinkle her nose, scanning the living room. "Tommy looks so scrawny. Aren't you feeding him at all?" She'd scold, without even asking how the child was doing. "My Ryan is so smart, so gifted, and you're not helping him grow at all," she'd hiss venomously, eyeing Emily with contempt. Ryan sadly never stood up for his wife. He feared his mother her criticism, her disapproval. He chose silence, hoping it would all blow over. But his silence only fueled the fire. Margaret sensed her power and kept pushing her agenda. "You married a country girl. She's not your equal," she'd whisper to her son when Emily left the room. "She's riding on your coattails." "You should be the head of the family, not her," she'd insist, eroding Ryan's confidence. And like a sponge, Ryan soaked up every poisonous word. He started snapping at Emily over trifles. He felt she spent too much time on the child and too little on him. He'd accuse her of sitting at home doing nothing, even though he knew she worked full-time and carried the financial load. "You spend all day glued to your laptop. Who's going to handle the house and the kid?" he'd grumble, scattering his socks around the room. "You've stopped taking care of yourself. Look in the mirror, you look like a frump," he'd throw at her crudely, not even noticing her eyes welling up with tears. Emily endured it. She endured for Tommy, for the sake of the family. She hoped things would improve, that Ryan would come to his senses, that Margaret would leave them alone. But with each day, her hope faded. She felt a wall of misunderstanding and alienation growing between her and Ryan. She caught herself thinking more often that she was living in a stranger's home with a stranger. She felt less like a wife and more like a temporary guest who could be shown the door at any moment. One evening, with Tommy already asleep, Emily sat in the kitchen sipping tea. Ryan came home late, irritable and angry. He stormed silently into the living room and turned on the television. Emily decided to talk. She knew this couldn't go on. "Ryan, we need to talk," she said quietly, entering the room. Ryan scowled but turned off the television. "What now?" he muttered. "I can't do this anymore. You've stopped noticing me. You're always criticizing me. Your mom constantly humiliates me. I feel like an outsider here," Emily blurted out in one breath. Ryan stayed silent. He looked at her with indifference, as if seeing her for the first time. "You're to blame for everything. You need to be more feminine, more attentive. You should care more about me," he finally said. "I work, I take care of the kid, I try to make the home cozy. What else do I have to do?" Emily asked, feeling a lump in her throat. "You should be grateful I'm with you. You should be happy I put up with you," Ryan replied cynically. Emily felt something snap inside her heart. She realized she couldn't live like this anymore. The illusion of quiet family bliss shattered completely. She was left alone with the bitter truth. She no longer loved Ryan, and it seemed he had never loved her. She was just a convenient addition to his life, a free labor force, and a target for his ego. The next day, Ryan's mother showed up, unannounced, for dinner. After the meal with Margaret in the apartment, a thick, almost tangible silence hung in the air. Emily felt it pressing down on her, as if it concentrated all the unspoken tension built up over months. Ryan sat across from her, staring at his half-eaten salad as if answers hid there. Margaret, on the other hand, radiated satisfaction, watching her son with a predatory gleam in her eyes. Emily knew something big was coming, something that would flip her life upside down. She felt it in every cell. She was tired of Margaret's constant nitpicking, Ryan's silent complicity, the sense that she didn't belong. The tension built with every second. Emily watched Ryan, trying to guess his thoughts, but his face was a mask. Finally, Ryan looked up. His gaze was cold and detached, like he was staring at a stranger. Emily flinched. "Emily," he began, his voice sounding foreign. "We need to talk." Emily nodded silently, her insides twisting with dread. "Mom's right," Ryan continued, looking away. You're not cutting it." Emily raised her eyebrows in shock. "Not cutting it? What did he mean? She'd worked like a dog to support the family, pay the mortgage, give their son everything he needed, and he said she wasn't cutting it." "I don't understand," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" "You're just sitting at home," Margaret jumped in, "spending my son's money. You think it comes easy to us? Ryan works like an ox, and you just sit around having kids." "I work too," Emily retorted, anger boiling inside. "I work remotely, and my income covers—" "Your income is peanuts," Margaret cut her off. "You're living off my son." Emily looked at Ryan, expecting him to defend her, to tell his mother to stop. But Ryan stayed silent, head down. "Ryan, tell her," Emily pleaded. "Tell her it's not true." Ryan lifted his head and met Emily's eyes. There was no love, no regret, just cold resolve. "Mom's right," he repeated. "You're a nobody, straight from the dirt." Emily felt like she'd been slapped. Ryan's words cut like a knife. She'd always known Margaret despised her. But for Ryan to say this, "Take your little ragamuffin and scram," Ryan went on, not breaking eye contact. "I don't need you anymore." He pointed to the door. Emily stared, unbelieving. Was this the end? Had everything they had, their dreams, their hopes, crumbled in an instant? Something inside her snapped. She felt no more pain, no resentment, just emptiness. She knew she couldn't stay, couldn't endure the humiliation any longer. Emily rose from her chair without a word. She walked silently to the closet, pulled out a suitcase, and started packing. Ryan and Margaret watched in silence. She packed the baby's things, a few of her dresses, some photos. No tears came. Inside, there was only cold determination. Once done, Emily scooped up the sleeping child, slung her bag over her shoulder, and headed for the door. "Where do you think you're going?" Margaret asked mockingly, eyeing Emily. "You think anyone needs you?" Emily paused at the door and turned. She looked at Ryan, then Margaret. "I'm leaving," she said calmly, "and I'll never come back." She stepped out, leaving Ryan and Margaret alone. As she descended the stairs, each step felt lighter, freer. Outside, it was dark and cold. Emily called a cab and gave the address of her old place with her parents. In the morning, Ryan woke with a heavy head. He vaguely recalled the previous evening, the fight with Emily, the words he'd hurled. He felt a twinge of guilt, but still thought he'd done right. Mom always knew best. He got up and went to the kitchen. Margaret was already bustling at the stove. "Good morning, son," she said, smiling. "Sleep well?" "Fine," Ryan replied, sitting at the table. "Where's Emily?" "Emily left," Margaret said nonchalantly. "Frying eggs. She said so herself last night." Ryan frowned. He'd expected her to beg for forgiveness, plead to stay, but she just left. "And we just let her go?" he asked, staring at his mother in surprise. "What were we supposed to do?" Margaret shrugged. "She made her choice." Ryan said nothing. He felt awkward, lost. He knew he'd made a mistake but didn't know how to fix it. Just then, the doorbell rang. Margaret opened it, and a stranger in a sharp suit stood there. "Hello," the man said, handing Margaret an envelope. "This is for Ryan." She passed it to her son. Ryan opened it and pulled out 2 documents. The first was a notice of separation. The second, an intent to dissolve the marriage. Ryan was stunned. He hadn't expected Emily to act so fast. "What does this mean?" he asked, looking at his mother. "It means your wife filed for divorce," Margaret shrugged, "and she's demanding a property split." "What property?" Ryan exclaimed. "We have nothing." "Nothing?" Margaret snapped. "What about the apartment?" "But the mortgage is in Emily's name," Ryan protested, "and she made all the payments." "That doesn't matter," Margaret said. "It's joint property. You have rights to half." Ryan felt panic rising. He knew if Emily went to court, he could lose everything. "We have to do something," he said, staring at his mother. "Talk to Emily. Convince her to withdraw it." "Don't you dare," Margaret cut him off sharply. "You're a man. Fight for what's yours." Ryan didn't know what to do. He was confused and scared. He'd trapped himself. Margaret watched her son triumphantly. She'd gotten rid of the daughter-in-law she deemed unworthy. But she didn't know yet this was just the beginning. Emily wouldn't give up without a fight, and she had an ace up her sleeve. The courtroom was stuffy. Emily felt sticky sweat on her back despite her thin blouse. She avoided looking at Ryan, seated on the other side with his mother. Margaret glared at her with pure hatred and disdain. Emily took a deep breath, focusing on Victor Andrews, her godfather, who sat beside her calmly reviewing documents. His presence was soothing like a rock in this storm of emotions. The trial started with formalities. The judge, a middle-aged woman with weary eyes, read the case details. Emily half listened, knowing the real battle was ahead. When it came to property rights on the apartment, Ryan fidgeted noticeably. He kept glancing at his mother, who seemed to be mentally directing him. Ryan's lawyers spoke first, a young, cocky attorney clearly expecting a win. He launched into an emotional speech about how Ryan slaved away to provide for the family, how he loved Emily and their child. Emily barely held back a sarcastic smirk. Loved? Provided? Empty words. "Your Honor," the lawyer said, "my client poured all his effort and resources into building their home. Yes, the mortgage is in Emily's name, but that was mutual for better loan terms. In reality, the apartment is joint property, and my client deserves half its value." Emily's heart raced. She knew Ryan had no proof of contributions. All payments, receipts, everything was in her name, from her account. But she feared emotions might sway the court, that they'd buy the lawyer's convincing lies. Then it was Emily's turn. She stood, speaking calmly and confidently, though she trembled inside. "Your Honor," she began, "I won't talk about love or feelings. I'll stick to facts. The mortgage is in my name. All payments, mortgage, utilities, maintenance came from my personal account. I have all the documents to prove it." She handed the judge a folder Victor had prepared. The judge reviewed them closely, asking questions. Emily answered clearly, keeping emotions in check. Next, Victor spoke. He was deliberate, each word heavy and persuasive. "Your Honor," he said, "we see an attempt to pass wishful thinking as fact. The opposing lawyer claims his client invested, but offers no evidence. All documents show otherwise. Emily bore the financial burden alone. Moreover, while on maternity leave, she worked remotely to support the family. Ryan, regrettably, provided little financial help and failed as a responsible husband and father." Victor paused, staring at Ryan. Ryan looked away, flushing. "We ask the court to consider the evidence and rule fairly, leaving the apartment with Emily." It's her legal right and the only way to secure a stable future for her child. Silence fell over the room. Only paper rustling and murmurs broke it. The judge called a recess to decide. Emily stepped into the hall, drained. Victor patted her shoulder. "It'll be okay, Emily. We did our best." She nodded but couldn't shake the anxiety. Thoughts swirled, conversations, faces, words. She feared losing, ending up homeless, penniless. Ryan and Margaret huddled at the hall's end, arguing animatedly. Margaret shot Emily a venomous, triumphant glare. Emily looked away, hiding her fear. After agonizing minutes, the judge returned and announced the verdict. Having reviewed the evidence and arguments, the court denies Ryan's claims for property division. Ownership of the apartment remains with Emily. Emily felt months of tension release. She held back joyful tears. Victor hugged her tightly. Ryan stood thunderstruck. Margaret shouted something incoherent, drowned in the noise. The trial was over. Emily had won. As they left the courthouse, Emily saw Ryan slouching toward the car where his mother waited. Margaret berated him angrily, jabbing his chest. In that moment, Emily felt not triumph, but pity. They destroyed their own lives. Days later, Emily learned Ryan appealed. She wasn't surprised. She knew he wouldn't quit easily, but she was ready to fight. The appeals court upheld the original ruling. Emily's evidence was ironclad, no grounds for reversal. Ryan moved back with his mother. The apartment stayed with Emily. She asked nothing from him, no compensation. She just wanted peace. Peace and a chance to start anew. Weeks later, Emily heard Ryan was called to HR. He looked rumpled, sleepless. After the crushing court loss, his world dimmed. Returning to his mother's apartment, to his old childhood room, felt humiliating. Calls and texts to Emily went unanswered, like pounding on a brick wall. The HR chief, Paul Anderson, greeted him formally. "Ryan, have a seat." Tension hung thick. Paul cleared his throat. "We've received an anonymous complaint about some financial dealings you were involved in. We must investigate." Ryan went cold. He knew exactly what it meant. The small schemes he'd pulled to see more successful kickbacks, padded expenses, fake trips, he'd thought they went unnoticed, but apparently not. Emily? He couldn't believe she'd do it. Though who else knew the details? "This covers the last 2 years," Paul continued, watching Ryan closely. "You understand, if confirmed, consequences could be severe, up to termination and referral to authorities." Ryan tried to protest, explain, but words stuck in his throat. He felt the ground crumble. His carefully crafted image of a rising star shattered. All his efforts, ambitions, wiped out by one anonymous tip. Leaving the office, Ryan felt utterly broken. He pulled out his phone and dialed Emily again. Beeps. Silence. She didn't answer. She'd cut him off like pruning a dead branch from a healthy tree. Margaret met him at home, eyes full of worry. Word traveled fast. "What happened, Ryan? What do they want?" she wailed, hugging his shoulders. Ryan pushed her away. "Mom, leave me alone." "This is all your fault. You ruined everything. If you hadn't meddled in our relationship, none of this would have happened." Margaret looked hurt. "How can you say that? I only wanted the best for you. I saw she wasn't your match." "Not my match?" Ryan snarled. "She carried the whole family, and I, like a fool, listened to you and played the big shot. Now what? No job, no money, no her." He stormed to his room and slammed the door. Margaret stood in the living room, bewildered and offended. She didn't get how it all backfired. She just wanted her boy to be happy. Meanwhile, Emily sat at an outdoor cafe, watching her son, little Tommy, sleep peacefully in his stroller. 3 months had passed since the court ruled in her favor. 3 months of quiet and calm. 3 months to recover, heal, and plan ahead. At first, it was tough. Fear of being alone with a child, uncertainty about tomorrow, it all weighed on her. But Emily found the strength to move forward. She returned to work, part-time for now. A nanny, recommended by friends, helped. She knew she had to grow, push on. 3 years later, Emily sat at the same cafe, but no longer the timid, insecure woman she'd been. She was strong, independent, successful. Tommy, now a big, clever boy, played nearby. She worked at a major IT firm, earning well, providing for herself and her son. She'd bought a new apartment, spacious and bright. She traveled, exercised, met friends. She lived fully. Ryan called, sometimes, trying to win her back, begging forgiveness. But Emily was firm. She'd forgiven him but couldn't forget. She knew they were different people with no future. One day, she got a message from him. Things were bad. He'd lost his job. His girlfriend left. He asked for help. Emily read it and sighed. She pitied him but couldn't aid him. She'd been through too much and knew everyone must own their actions. She dialed her friend Katie. "Katie, hi. How's it going?" "Hey, Emily." "All good, thanks." "You?" "Great too." "Listen, Katie, an old acquaintance messaged me about job hunting. Any openings at your company?" "Who is it?" Katie asked. Emily paused. "Just a former colleague. Good at his work, but life's tangled him up. I think he needs a shot." Katie agreed to help. Emily hoped Ryan would seize the chance and start over. Emily leaned back in her chair and looked at her son. Tommy smiled at her. She knew she'd done right. She'd chosen herself, her child, her future. All right, thanks for listening.